The sun hung low over the Pacific, turning the massive carrier USS Valor into a floating slab of gold. Heat shimmered off the steel deck, and the crew gathered in scattered groups, enjoying what little downtime the Navy ever offered. Helicopters slept with their rotors tied, F-35s glinted under the sun, and sailors lounged near tie-down chains, trading jokes louder than the ocean wind. It was supposed to be an ordinary day until Lieutenant Commander Maya Cross stepped onto the flight deck. Most of the sailors didn't notice her at first. She wasn't wearing a dress uniform, medals, or anything that would mark her as someone important. Just standard fatigues, no rank on display, no introduction. Her hair tied tightly, her expression calm, shoulders squared with military precision. A lone figure walking with quiet purpose, but one person noticed her immediately, Admiral Kane. He stood near the center of the deck with a small circle of officers around him, smiling behind a pair of aviators. He had been entertaining the group with exaggerated war stories, half-truths polished to sound like legend. Whenever he laughed, the officers laughed. Whenever he bragged, they nodded. And then he saw her. Kane nudged Commander Holt beside him. "Who's the new kid?" he asked, smirking as Meyer approached with her hands behind her back, the formal stance of someone reporting but not yet acknowledged. Holt squinted. "Dunno, sir. Looks like intel staff, or maybe logistics. They send anyone up here these days." The Admiral chuckled. "Doesn't even look old enough to buy a beer." The officers laughed obediently. Maya stopped 3 paces away, boots clacking lightly on the steel. "Permission to speak, Admiral," she said, her tone steady. A few sailors turned to look. The voice didn't match the face. They expected something timid, but her tone was razor-sharp. Kane didn't answer immediately. He just studied her with that smug curiosity of someone who believed every woman in uniform must be new, inexperienced, or misplaced. He took off his sunglasses, revealing amused eyes. "All right then," he said. "What can I do for you, Lieutenant?" She didn't provide a name. "I was requested on deck, sir." "Oh." The Admiral's grin widened. "And what exactly do you do?" "Special warfare, sir." A ripple moved through the bystanders. A couple of sailors glanced at her, surprised. She didn't look like the type. Too composed, too calm, too quiet. Kane raised an eyebrow. "Special warfare, you?" He chuckled. "Right. And I'm Santa Claus." More laughter erupted. Maya didn't flinch. Her posture remained perfectly still, but her eyes flickered. Just for a second, not hurt, not offended, but calculating. The Admiral put his hands on his hips. "Come on, Lieutenant. Humor an old man, if you're really special warfare." He leaned forward slightly. "What's your kill count?" The officers behind him grinned, waiting for a joke. A few sailors elbowed each other, whispering. It was a moment everyone expected to be funny. Maybe she'd stutter, maybe she'd play along. Maybe she'd say she wasn't at liberty to discuss it. Kane clearly expected an answer like, "Oh, 0, sir," or "just training missions, sir." Something to keep the mood light, but Maya Cross didn't laugh. She didn't even blink. Instead, she looked him dead in the eyes and spoke in a calm, level tone that carried across the deck, slicing through the chatter and the wind like a blade. 467 confirmed, sir." The laughter died instantly. Absolute silence swallowed the deck. Helicopter crews froze mid-step. A group of mechanics turned around slowly. Even the ocean seemed to quieten as the weight of the number settled. 467, 467. Not an estimate, not a joke, not a story. A number spoken with the simple certainty of someone who had lived every one of those moments. Kane's smile collapsed into something hollow. His eyes widened just enough for everyone to notice. A few of the younger officers shifted uncomfortably, suddenly unsure whether standing so close to him was safe. The Admiral swallowed once, hard. Meyer remained still, not proud, not boastful, just truth. Confirmed, Kane repeated, his voice barely above a whisper. Yes, sir. The silence deepened. No one on that deck knew it yet, but this moment, this exact sentence, would become the spark that exposed a 12-year secret the Navy had buried so deep it wasn't supposed to resurface. And Lieutenant Commander Maya Cross, the woman they thought was nobody, was about to become the most talked about operator on the entire Pacific Fleet. For several seconds, the deck of the USS Valor felt like a photograph. Every sailor, every officer, every drifting cloud of ocean mist locked in place. The Pacific wind tugged at uniforms, but no one moved. No one breathed. No one dared to speak. 467 confirmed, sir. The number echoed in their ears long after Maya Cross stopped speaking. It was Lieutenant Jensen who reacted first. He blinked rapidly, looked at his buddy, and whispered, "Did she say 400?" His friend didn't answer. He couldn't. His mouth hung open like a man who had just witnessed a ghost walk through a wall. The Admiral said nothing. His jaw tightened, his posture stiffening with each second that ticked by. The mockery in his eyes had evaporated, replaced by something he had not felt in years. Uncertainty. Maya didn't fill the silence. She didn't try to justify her answer. Her stillness was almost unnerving, as if she had simply stated the weather and saw no need for further explanation. Finally, Admiral Kane cleared his throat. "Lieutenant Commander," he said slowly, her rank clicking into place only now. "That's quite a claim." "It's not a claim, sir," she replied. "It's a record." A few sailors actually stepped back. A record? Whose, where, how? Why hadn't they heard of her? The questions speared across the deck like shrapnel, silent but explosive. Kane straightened his shoulders, trying to gather the authority that had momentarily slipped from him. "That's classified information. No operator would reveal that publicly. I was ordered to report here and answer all questions personally," she said, "including yours." That struck him like a slap. Ordered? By whom? Before he could voice the question, Commander Holt leaned toward him and whispered, "Sir, if that number is real, she outranks every active SEAL kill record on file." Kane shot him a sharp look. "Impossible. The highest is -243, sir," Holt finished, swallowing, "and even that one is disputed." The realization twisted the Admiral's expression into something complicated, part embarrassment, part suspicion, part fear. Maya's eyes flicked to a nearby sailor who had dropped a wrench when she spoke. He still hadn't picked it up. She looked at him, and the man froze harder. That reaction wasn't new to her. It didn't bother her. She had lived a life where reactions like that were normal. Kane stepped closer, lowering his voice, though everyone could still hear. "Where exactly did these confirmations take place?" "Across 8 theaters," she said. 8? Most SEALs saw 2 or 3. High-level operators saw 4. 8 was unheard of. Kane took a slow breath, struggling to maintain composure. "And why, Lieutenant Commander, would none of this be in your service record?" "It is," she replied. "Just not the record you're allowed to access." A murmur rippled through the deck. Officers exchanged glances, each silently wondering the same thing. Who the hell is she? Kane's mind raced. What if this wasn't a joke? What if she wasn't exaggerating? What if this woman standing in front of him, calm, unassuming, unimpressed by rank, was someone higher than even he could comprehend? He needed answers. "Maya Cross," he said. "Which unit did you say you were from?" "I didn't," she replied. "A beat." He exhaled sharply. "Well, let's hear it." She lifted her chin slightly, the only visible movement she had made since arriving. "SEAL Team Omega, sir." Dead silence. A few officers frowned. One sailor mouthed, "Omega? What?" Kane felt the blood drain from his face. There was no Team Omega, not officially, not publicly, not even within classified operational rosters. Omega existed in rumors, whispers about a team formed for operations the Pentagon did not want traced. Missions where diplomacy didn't matter, missions that were sealed before they began. Maya continued, operational from 2009 to 2016. Dissolved after Operation Blackwake. Holt's eyes widened. Blackwake, that mission was lost. No survivors. Maya looked straight at him. There was one. Some sailors gasped. A few stepped farther away accidentally. Even the engines rumbling in the ship's belly seemed to quiet under the weight of her words. Kane felt sweat forming at the back of his neck. This wasn't just unexpected. This was history rewriting itself in real time. He took a moment, composing himself enough to speak without stuttering. "Why come forward now?" he asked. "I didn't choose to," she said. "I was summoned." "By who?" "For now, classified." Her tone was flat, final, a locked door. The Admiral opened his mouth, but before he could push further, a sharp beep crackled through the flight deck speakers. "Attention, Lieutenant Commander Maya Cross, report to Intelligence Deck C. Immediate." Every head turned toward her. She didn't look surprised. She simply nodded, stepped around the Admiral, and began walking toward the hatch. Sailors parted instinctively, clearing a path without needing to be told. As she passed, someone whispered, "Ghost." She heard it. She didn't deny it. And the USS Valor realized something chilling. The Navy hadn't just met a SEAL. They had met the legend they were never meant to know existed. The intelligence deck C of the USS Valor was buried deep beneath layers of reinforced bulkheads, far from the sunlight and noise of the flight deck. As Maya descended the narrow stairwells, the air grew colder, the lighting dimmer, and the atmosphere more suffocating. Every corridor hummed with electricity and quiet tension. She had walked these halls before, years ago, before anyone knew her call sign, before the Navy erased an entire unit from its existence. The memories clung to the steel walls like ghosts, and she was one of them. Two armed intelligence officers flanked the entrance to the briefing chamber. They didn't make eye contact with her as she approached. They simply stepped aside, almost respectfully, almost fearfully. The heavy door slid open with a hydraulic hiss. Inside, the room glowed with digital blue light from massive holographic screens. Tactical maps floated Miderco, ordinates, red zones, blacked-out regions where operations had no official name. Several higher-ranking officers stood around a glass table, their faces hardened with the look of men who had seen too much and discussed even more. At the center of the room, an older man waited with both hands behind his back. Director Nathaniel Briggs, CA Liaison to Special Warfare, the only living man who knew the entire history of SEAL Team Omega. "Maya," he said quietly, his voice neither warm nor cold, just inevitable. "It's been a long time." She stepped forward. "Director?" Briggs scanned her face as though studying a rare artifact returned from a lost civilization. "You caused quite the stir upstairs." "I answered a question," she replied simply. His lips twitched, not a smile, more like a grim acknowledgement of who she was. "You always did have a talent for ruining people's confidence." She didn't reply. One of the officers tapped a panel, and the holographic screen behind them flickered to life. A combat zone appeared, mountainous terrain, cliffs rising like jagged teeth, smoke drifting across the valley, heat signatures glowed red, bodies lay unmoving between boulders. Without turning, Briggs said, "Do you recognize this place?" Maya's throat tightened, but her expression didn't change. Yes, it was the valley where Team Omega died. The room fell silent as the map rotated slowly. 10 operators, world, class, hand-picked by the Pentagon for black operations that couldn't exist on paper. Omega wasn't a team, it was a myth. A rumor whispered in SIFs late at night. It was the Navy's answer to problems no military wanted to admit existed. And their last mission, Operation Blackwake, had never been declassified. Because no one survived except her, Briggs clicked a button. Another hologram lit up, this time a live recording from a helmet cam. The footage was violent, shaky, chaotic. Gunfire erupted, bodies moved through smoke, commands were shouted. And Maya watched herself, a younger version of her, mask up, night vision goggles pulled over her eyes, moving with deadly precision. She dropped behind cover, fired 3 rounds, sprinted across open ground under heavy fire. The footage was brutal, intimate, raw. The officers glanced at her with open disbelief. She didn't move. Briggs spoke softly. Operation Blackwake, you were inserted with 9 other operators. Your objective, eliminate a rogue paramilitary faction and recover a stolen list of covert asset identities. That list had contained hundreds of names. Agents, informants, undercover officials, the kind of file that could collapse nations if exposed. You lost comms within the first hour. Briggs continued. Reinforcements were 2 days away. Extraction was impossible. He paused. And yet, you completed the objective alone. The footage shifted again. A night ambush. Maya dragging a wounded teammate. Maya firing from a cliff. Maya patching a wound with shaking hands covered in blood. Maya kneeling beside a fallen operator, whispering something the camera didn't catch, until she was the last one breathing. Briggs turned to face her fully. Tell them why you survived. She looked at him calmly. Luck, try again, she exhaled, because I knew we were betrayed. The words slammed into the room like thunder. Betrayed, a black ops team, sacrificed. The officers exchanged uneasy glances. Briggs continued, a leak inside naval intelligence compromised your mission. Omega was meant to disappear. You were the variable they didn't account for. Maya kept her eyes on the holographic map, but a shadow passed over her face. Something old, something broken, something she had buried for years. After the mission, Briggs said, you returned with the list, alone, injured, barely alive, but alive. He stepped closer to her. And then we buried you. She met his eyes. You needed a ghost. You became one. The room returned to silence. After a long moment, Briggs nodded to the officers, who shut off the holograms. Lieutenant Commander Cross, he said, his tone now formal. The Navy wants answers, and the truth about Omega is about to surface, whether we like it or not. Maya stood straight, eyes steady. What's the assignment? Briggs hesitated, the first time she'd ever seen him unsure. You're not being sent on a mission, he said. You're being investigated. Her heart didn't race, her face didn't change, but something cold curled inside her chest. Investigated, for surviving. Briggs stepped aside, and the door behind her slid open. Admiral Kane stood there, and he looked terrified.